Hello and happy Friday, everybody. My name is Matt with Beacon Software, and in today's Feature Friday, we're going to start taking a look at accounting. At the time of this recording, it's the end of November. Usually people start getting their numbers in order, start trying to clean up their databases. So in this series, we're going to take a look at how to check over our calls, how to enter payments in the system, how commissions is going to work, and then we'll finish up with if you wanted to transfer information into QuickBooks, how that's going to work as well. So if you're just learning how to do something today for a quick tips and tricks, or you need a refresher, stay tuned. All right, so with that being said, today we're going to take a look at how to check over our calls. We'll start there. That's going to be the first step in anything accounting and Dispatch Anywhere. So we're going to take a look at creating invoices, what to look for, how to fix calls, everything along those lines, and let's get started. All right, so I've already logged into our Dispatch Anywhere. So at this point, the call's already been run and finished in the system. So this is the chance now for us to check that call over for accuracy, make sure everything is correct with it. Right, so we're going to do that by clicking on the third icon right across the top here, the Accounting tab. So this is going to take us into our dashboard. And quickly we'll take a look and talk about these three icons or three boxes that we have here. So the first box, the blue one, 46 unbilled calls for $5,280. This basically means that I have 46 calls in the last 30 days that haven't been checked over yet. Right? Now the $5,280, that may or may not be correct. This 46 calls, if every single one of those calls were 100% correct, then yes, my balance would be an additional $5,200. If I have to fix any of these calls, though, that balance can go up or down depending on what I need to change. So take that with kind of a grain of salt. It may or may not be correct, but it gives you a good starting point. Our open balance is in the middle, the yellowish orangish box here, 25 open invoices for $2,500. So again, in the last 30 days, I have 25 open invoices. This dollar amount should be correct now at that point because I've already checked these calls over. And then just any payments I've taken in the system in the last 30 days. In this case, 8 payments for $3,241. This is a good starting point. If you're looking for exact numbers or certain date ranges, then you want to run a report for those things. But it gives you more of a snapshot when you log in to start your accounting. You can kind of quickly see those numbers. These numbers will refresh the first time you log into this system. So if you end up logging in and things have changed throughout the day, more calls have been finished, so on and so forth, we do have a refresh button up here, which will allow you to refresh the numbers of anything that might have changed. You don't have to do that, but it is a nice feature just to see the numbers move through the process. The other two buttons I like to take a look at is our Underbilled and our Overdue button. Now, overdue you'll probably see most of the time unless your accounts are paying within 30 days. This just lets us know that we have calls or invoices that are older than 30 days that have still not been paid. So I can actually click on that button and it takes me into an invoice search and it will start showing me all the open invoices here. So I can open them up, take a look at them. Again, kind of a quick search type feature. I could click on the yellow area and that takes me into the current invoices. So those, in that example, those 28 invoices, those are going to be these ones here. Right. I can do the same thing for payments if I want to see what those 8 payments are. So here they are. And then let's talk about the first step. This is the step that the training is going to cover today. These 46 calls and underbilled. All right. So again, I can click on the blue. And this just does a search for me, so it's going to show me those 46 calls that we can see right up here. And yes, I can manage my calls from here if I need to. It's not the best way to do it, but it is an option. If I click on the red, that's going to search all those calls that are or haven't been checked over yet, older than 30 days worth of calls. So those are going to show here. You can see I have 100, at least the top 100 matches. If I need to show more, I can do that. It brings in another 100. Or I do have a little drop down where I can show max, and it brings in every single call that hasn't been checked over. In this case, I have 807 calls that haven't been checked over. Right. The potential problem with that is if they're still in this step, so the calls haven't been checked over, it hasn't moved in your system to your AR. It hasn't moved to your sales reports. You haven't paid commission on it. as far as accounting is concerned in Dispatch Anywhere, this create invoice step is going to be the most critical step. It has to be done for anything else accounting in the software to work. So that's why we're starting here today for this training. So let's take a look at some of these calls. So let's learn how to actually create invoices for our calls after they've been finished. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on create invoice. Now, the first place it defaults to, it's going to be calls that we finished today. Now, I don't have any in our system that we finished today. So the first thing you're always going to do, no matter what accounting section that you're in, is you're going to want to set your filter. All right. Now, we have a couple options in here. Most of the time, you're changing your filter of the finished on date. So it defaults to today. Now I can, maybe I want to check over calls from yesterday, this week, this month, date range, etc. If I choose anytime, that means give me everything that hasn't been checked over yet. So in our case, we had a little over 800 calls. It's going to bring in all 800 of those calls if I click anytime, which I'm going to go ahead and do. I can set further filters. Maybe I'm only checking over a certain location, a certain account. Maybe I only want to look at a certain driver. I can set all these filters and just filter in calls that I want to see. If you leave them blank, though, it's going to bring in everything that hasn't been checked over again. All right, so we'll do a quick search. All right, so let's see what we got here. So here's our 856 calls that haven't been checked over. All right, starts with the most recent. Now I can click on any one of these columns up here and I can filter these. So if I want to start with the oldest, for example, I can filter from oldest to newest versus newest to oldest, things like that. Other helpful things on this filter, if I want to group by division or location, now most of our customers have 1 or 2 locations, so it groups all those locations calls together. You may want to group it per driver. Maybe I'm going through the driver's tickets and I want to see all their calls grouped together. Well, I can do that with this group by option. We can include impound. Impound, typically most people aren't creating invoices for. They're waiting until that car is actually released from impound to actually post it or create the invoice for it. If you're somebody that needs to push it through ahead of time, you can bring it in here. By default, this will not show your impounded vehicles unless you specifically press this button. And then show the VIN and the odometer reading, which is just another helpful fields that I can see over here. I'll leave it on here. So this is just another way that I can tell without having to open up the call that the VIN or the odometer reading was entered on that call. Right. Now, we'll quickly see some of these calls have warnings on it. And then if we take a look to the right, one of these 2 buttons or both of these buttons will be highlighted. Now, if the pencil is highlighted, it can mean one of 2 things. Either 1, you're missing information that you said was required for billing, or you have a bad VIN number on the call. We validate VINs if they're 6 and less, we ignore them. Anything greater than 6, though, we will validate. So if it's a bad VIN, you may see this as well. The little arrow icon indicates that you have a potential problem with your services on the call, right? And then if both are highlighted, that just means you have a potential problem with both. Right. Now, I don't have to necessarily open up every single one of these calls to check them over. I can use this little drop-down arrow, and it will show me the services on this call. So this example, I had a battery test service for 65. This one I had a tow and a fuel delivery, etc. If I want to open up all of them at once, I can use this little toggle button right up here. And this is going to open up every single call so I can just scroll through and potentially fix anything I need to fix as I'm going through my list here. Now, we try to tell you what the warning is if you open up the call right over here. So like call 11894, it's telling me that there's potential invalid job services, review and fix. So if I look at this, I have a fuel delivery, which is basically a primary service at $0. Anything that's a primary service that comes in at $0 will flag as a potential problem. Now, if this was correct, maybe we didn't charge anything for the fuel delivery, we just charged for the tow. I can override that and push it through. That's completely normal as well. But if you have a primary service at 0, we try to flag it. Just potentially there might be something wrong with this call. Take a look at it. If you have any services like this, so I have this 11885 call, I have in-route mileage, I can see that my quantities are 0. Anything with a quantity of 0 will also be flagged. In this case, we just forgot to use the calculator on the call. So this is another example of something I can go in and fix if I need to. Now you may also see these -2s or -3s, and it will tell you, in this case I have potential invalid job services, but I also have an invoice is already created for this call. Performing this action will create a new invoice. We get a lot of questions on the -2s, -3s. Basically what that means is this call, the invoice has already been created at least once. All right, so the next time I've added services to that call after the fact, it's going to feed in as a -2. In this example, this is the third time I've added services to this call. Anytime you add a new service to a call, you need to repost it or create the invoice again for it. In this case, there could be reasons you want a -2 or a -3. Think about that as a page number. So if I push this through as 11885-2, whatever my other service was on the call will be on page 1. This en-route mileage would be on page 2. For most customers, they don't need that functionality. So if you see that, most likely 99% of the time when we talk to people, you're going to want to merge your invoice together. So if I hit this merge button, 11885-2, I want to push it all back to page 1. All right, so by changing it, I can do that. And now when I save that, those two services now got merged back into one page versus having it as a separate page. Again, there could be a place and time where you'd want to split up an invoice like that. Maybe party A gets the tow, party B gets the mileage, but it was all one call. That could be a reason that you want a -1, -2. But I would say in 99% of the cases, you're going to want to merge those invoices together. Again, we're going to flag it as a potential problem or tell you anyways that an invoice has already been created. So if you ever see that, unless you specifically need that, most likely you're going to be using that merge button and pushing it back together into one invoice. All right. The other couple things that we show on this page are payments. All right, so let me uncheck this real quick. If you have a receipt with a green check mark on it, that just means that this invoice is paid in full. So typically if you're checking over the calls here, you're talking about maybe a cash call. Most likely somebody's probably already taken payment for that. So if you see a cash call and it's not paid, it may be a red flag for you that you need to take a look at that call. If I want to see that payment, I can actually click this button and it shows me in this case has two payments, one for 0, one for $53.75. If it's completely grayed out, that just means no payments are on it, and if you hover over it, it tells us that. Then if you see one that's kind of a darker gray color without the green check mark on it, that just means we have some payment on it, or at least a partial payment on this invoice, but it's not paid in full yet. So if I was curious about this one, I could click on that and see, okay, well this invoice only has a 10-cent payment on it, but it was for $600. Again, if I'm checking over calls, that's going to raise a red flag for me. What's going on with this call? That doesn't make any sense. Let me look into it further. The whole point of this step is to make sure that this call is correct before pushing it either into billing, commissions, sales reports, any of those things that you want to make sure your numbers are accurate. This is your step to make sure that your numbers, your calls are correct before it goes to the next step. So think about this as your checks and balances with creating the invoices. So let's say we've checked over these calls. I want to check a few of these. I can hit Save Invoice now. I'm going to get a green check mark on it. These calls will no longer appear on this page anymore. You're only going to be left with calls that still need to be checked over. So pretty simple process, but very important to make sure that we're doing this correctly. We do want to make sure that the numbers, whatever the dollar amounts are, either are what we billed or what we want to bill for that call. If you're talking about statements, invoices I need to send to customers, this is the amount that's going out because you verified it, right? All right, close that. You'll look at this, and again, this only refreshes the first time. So if I hit the refresh button, you'll see that that number now has dropped to 31, and some of the invoices have moved to my open invoices. Looks like one of them had a payment as well. It moved over here. So we're checking over calls. Pretty simple process. Again, we just want to make sure that is a process that you're doing. Most people do this on a daily basis or at least every other day to make sure that their calls are correct. But very important. Again, nothing else in accounting works unless this step is done. And with that, that's going to wrap up this Feature Friday on creating invoices. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comment section below. You could always email us at support@beaconsoftco.com, or you can always give us a call. The next training, we're going to take a look at how to enter payments in the system. So we've checked over these calls. How do we know that we're getting paid correctly in the system? So that's going to be our next Feature Friday. And then beyond that, again, we're going to cover commissions, and we'll take a look at if you're interested in transferring things to QuickBooks, how that works as well. Hope you learned something in this video today, and I hope you have a great week. We will see you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.